Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Often, a podcast about food, travel, the environment, mind, body, and spirit. I'm Melissa Goldberg, and over the course of my adult life, I've been focused on how to build an integrated community around food, health, wellness, and the environment. These are all related. Understanding these interrelationships helps us look at life as a holistic system and teaches us how to connect with each other to create a loving and thriving community. On Eat Well, Travel Often, I talk to farmers, foragers, cookbook authors, doctors, scientists, and entrepreneurs. All have one thing in common. The people I speak with are trying to better everyone's lives through their work and passion. These are the people who inspire me to be a better person. I hope to share with you my curiosity from everything from book to plate. And the goal of these conversations are to inspire you to eat well and travel often. Before the coronavirus hit our shores, there were many people in need across the country. This has only amplified since this pandemic has been spreading across the United States. As of this recording, worldwide, there are over 285,000 cases. In the United States, almost 20,000 people have been affected. My small town in New Jersey currently has 7 cases, and since the first case, it has doubled every 4 days. This is scary stuff for all of us. Many are stocking up on food in worries of supply chain interruptions. But what if you were worried about your next meal prior to COVID-19? What does this mean for those who need the support of local organizations to get their food? Today I am talking with Robin Peacock. She is the Executive Director of MEND NJ. MEND stands for Meeting Essential Needs with Dignity. MEND is a network of 20 member food pantries located through Essex County, New Jersey, providing food and other essential needs for families since 1980. Prior to the coronavirus, more than 400 million people in the United States were food insecure. Given the massive layoff since the virus hit our shores, this number has only increased. In New Jersey alone, there were almost 900,000 people who weren't sure where their next meal was coming from. Essex County, where MEND New Jersey services, has the highest rate of families and individuals who fall into this category. What is going to happen to those neediest cases if we do not stop the spread of the virus? Take a listen to what MEND NJ is doing and learn how you can help even if you do not live in New Jersey. Welcome, Robin. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I know you're crazy at this time, but I think it's really important that we get out there what you are doing. For everyone who's listening, I have Robin Peacock here, and she's from MEND New Jersey. And MEND is a group of food pantries located in Essex County. But I want Robin to tell you exactly what they are. So can you tell us what MEND is and what you're doing?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. MEND is really a network of 20 food pantries. As you mentioned, we're located throughout Essex County. And what we really do primarily is bring the pantries together to let them collaborate, exchange ideas with one another, talk about what resources they have, what challenges they're facing. And then we actually will then engage in sort of helping wherever there's a need that they're not able to meet independently. So, for example, one thing that's come up a lot, and we can get into it further in the conversation, but one thing we kept hearing is, they had a pretty good handle on the non-perishables, but what they really wished that they could provide more of to their clients was perishable, fresh food, dairy. They did seem to get some meats from different sources, but it was really the dairy and the fresh produce that were lacking. So we then kind of sprung into action and worked on some ways to help them with that. So I'll keep everyone in suspense until we get a little further in, but that's just an example. So we meet monthly with them, and then we do some fundraising, some food raising. We bring in guest speakers if there are particular topics that really they want to know more about. So kind of whatever the pantry's needs are that they would like help with, we are there to support that in whatever way we can.
The clients that come into your food pantries, I assume they are defined as food insecure. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, I mean, the basic definition is really not having access to a reliable food source, and and I have heard it said also that it means like you're not really sure where your next meal is going to come from. So, it can vary, but I think, people would be maybe surprised to know that the people that come to our pantries are look like just like you and me. Some have jobs, many are young families. It's in Essex County in particular, it's a lot of what we call the working poor. So people that do have hourly jobs, and because of the high cost of living, might not just have enough to make ends meet each month. So that's typically the folks that are coming into the pantries.
In the US, it said to that there's 40 million people that are food insecure. Just in New Jersey, that there's almost a million. And Essex County, where you work, it's the highest rate of food insecurity in the state. What besides like the working people, are there families that you support, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, because we have 20 pantries and because they're kind of spread around Essex County, they each really do have their own different demographics. But I would say that the trends we have seen lately are, I would say, immigrant families. We do have a lot of folks newly to the country that don't have a support system or resources or the ability to really, get sort of livable wage jobs. We also, some pantries serve a senior population. We have one pantry in Newark that really does senior citizens, and mostly men. And then we have a lot of pantries that will say, I have a lot of single moms that come in. So it really, you could kind of pick any demographic, and I can guarantee that there's a pantry in MEND that is serving those folks. We do have some that are disabled, or maybe on SSI. What we have a few pantries that are also they're in homeless shelters as well. So we have some that kind of deal with the homeless or close to homeless population, but primarily it's people that do have their own place to live and are just kind of not homeless, but not making enough to really get by.
So MEND has been around since 1980, and I assume the needs of your clients has changed, and especially today. But before we get into exactly today, how have you seen the changes over the years? You've been the executive director, what is it, 2 years now?
2 years, yep.
And I assume it's changed in those 2 years, but as it started in 1980, what are the changes? And is it increased in the amount of people who've needed your services, or is it steady, or do you see it going?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is definitely an increase in numbers of people looking to the pantries for help. I don't have a visual on this call, but we have a chart that depicts it basically over the last 7 years. It's 20 or so thousand people each year. So it's definitely grown quite a bit. And the other thing that's the biggest change, and we actually changed our name to reflect this, is it used to be like in the old model of food pantries, it was like an occasional short-term fix, usually run out of a church, where it was like someone in the family lost a job or became sick, and it was a temporary fix until they got back on their feet. And what we're seeing now is that the whole nature of hunger has changed, and it really is, these pantries are basically a monthly support system for these folks that need it. It's basically ongoing. It's not like just to get by for a short period. It's really a necessary part of how they can feed themselves, and live okay and provide for their families. So we used to be called Meeting Emergency Needs with Dignity, and we actually changed our name in 2017 to Meeting Essential Needs with Dignity, because it really has become an essential part of, a resource for folks. And it's a bit unfortunate that that's the case, but there just aren't enough other resources, that we've seen, at least enough to help people regularly.
So for these 20 food pantries, who runs these food pantries? Are there paid workers or the volunteers? How do they work?
So again, I know this, there's a theme here that none of our pantries are the same. It depends on the pantry. So the ones that some are part of shelters. And so those typically have a staff person. It might be an organization like St. James in Newark is a social service organization. So they provide, they have a pantry and a soup kitchen, but they also provide counseling services, social workers, all sorts of other things. So they have paid staff that run theirs. But the majority of the pantries are run by volunteers. And often, not all of them, but many are located in houses of worship. So often the volunteers are from maybe a congregation, and then there are volunteers from the church that, help kind of run the operations. But there are also times where they'll say to us, we need help, we need some people. We're not really getting volunteers. And so we'll help with that as needed. So I would say out of the 20, I think probably 16 or so are run entirely by volunteers.
If someone wanted to volunteer, how did they find out about it?
So we're in touch with the pantries all the time. So we have a Sign Up Genius link through our website, which is mendnj.org. There's a volunteer tab, and you can click on that, and it has lists of current opportunities. The one thing we're not really equipped for yet, and I'll get to that, is big groups. What we really like to do is not kind of take over the pantry space. We like to just give them one or two people here and there as needed at their request. We do get requests for large groups, and we can kind of deal with that differently, but it wouldn't typically be to like march into a pantry and kind of run the show.
So recently, you were donated a bus, which is a brilliant idea that someone did for you. And you call it the Green Bean, and I guess it's a mobile food market. How is this working for you? Is this, has this changed the way that you've been feeding people?
It's completely changed it, and it's been so great for us because I have to describe it first so you get the visual. But it's an old school bus, like a 1985 school bus. It's painted bright green, and it's covered in fruits and vegetable stickers, basically, that are all over it. And so it is hard to miss. So the first thing that it's done is helped people start to notice MEND as an organization and ask about our work and get more involved, which has been great. But the biggest thing is, when I mentioned before about the pantries wanting some support in terms of fresh food, it's enabled us to really, go out and do very targeted food drives for both the non-perishables that are really needed by particular pantries, and then raise funds to go purchase fresh food and set up like a farmer's market at the pantries. So what we'll do is, we call it a stuff the bean. So we'll bring the bus, we'll fill it with the non-perishables that the pantries requested. We'll go purchase the produce or dairy items that they would like. And then we bring the whole bus to the pantry when it's already open anyway. And we bring our own volunteers for that. And clients will go into the pantry, get their, traditional bag of pasta and tuna and whatever, 10 or so items. And then they'll get to stop by the Green Bean and select, basically an extra bag of fresh food. And we've seen people we've had people cry, to be honest. Like it's a shame that it's not something that's a regular offering, but it's just really hard for the pantries to manage independently, and it's expensive for folks to buy independently. So this is really helping to get a little bit more fresh food into people's homes.
You said you go out and purchase produce. How does that come about? Is this through donations, or do supermarkets donate, or how do you get your produce and your food?
So it varies. Some we just purchase through Restaurant Depot, but most we try and do through donations, through CSAs like Farm and Fork Society, or, we work with America's Grow-A-Row, which is a farm out in Pittstown where they will donate some fresh produce to us. So it's a little bit of a mix. And because, we're very focused on trying to make sure that we're responding to what the pantries want. And so we do get input from them. And so if we're noticing trends, and if they're saying, everybody wants spinach, then we have the potential to go out and try and source that. We haven't, it's still been in a pilot mode. It's pretty new, but we are exploring ways to basically, find exactly what they need in the sort of most cost effective and, fresh way, an easy way for us to handle it as well.
But even to fill the pantries, are those through individual donations, or is that something that, corporations donate to, or
For the
for
nonprofit.
both? Yeah.
That's also a mix. So some of the pantries are members of the Community Food Bank of New Jersey, and through there they will get free food through the federal, like USDA feeding programs. Some get donations. All of them get donations independently from, community groups, schools, churches. Right now, all of that's kind of stopped, which is, a bit of an issue. But and then we often will fundraise and give them grocery store gift cards so that they can purchase what they need that hasn't come in through donations or their own ability to get what they need.
Since Trump has become president, he's been cutting down on social services. How has this, hurt you guys? Have you seen a decrease in money coming in from since he's been president, or was it?
Well, it's affected us in the sense that the pantries are bearing the brunt of being the resource for food. So in the past, the more people, like ideally what we would want is people to be getting their SNAP benefits or food stamps, and be able to just go to the grocery store and shop like everyone else. But when those benefits are cut, then people are turning to the pantries more often. And so what's happening is like the nonprofits are kind of picking up the slack and trying to still feed folks because the government resources are dropping. So that's what we're seeing. So, more people coming, and it's unfortunate because, the pantries do a lot. They do a whole lot with what they have, but their resources are not deep, so when we have this kind of more and more people coming, we have to get a little, that's why MEND actually has started fundraising more independently, because the pantries weren't really able to cover what they needed on their own.
So you've been crazy busy this past week. Today is March 20th. I think New Jersey, we've been on lockdown for 5 days now since the coronavirus. How has this impacted you guys? What has it been looking like for you guys?
It's been a little bit nuts, I got to be honest. So the first issue we have is obviously keeping our pantry volunteers and patrons safe. So there's been a lot of calls and discussions about, which pantries are staying open. Most of, I would say not 100%, but maybe 80% of the pantries are run by folks ages 60 or older. So, they're the at-risk group right now. So each pantry is kind of evaluating its own ability to modify operations, if they can, but we have had a few that have closed. And so for the ones that have decided to close, we're rerouting food. We're filling up cars with food and we're getting it to other pantries that are staying open. We have a lot of pantries who are modifying their distributions. So until recently, a lot of pantries were trying to do what we call a choice model, which allows clients to kind of select from a different table, a protein from this table and a grain from this table. And it gives them a little bit more dignity in the shopping process, if you will. But because of all the health concerns right now, a lot of pantries are going back to just pre-bagging, a set amount of food and basically you drive by and pick it up or like distribute it right, grab and go kind of bags, and moving their operations outdoors.
How are you handling the whole social distancing thing and, do you have enough gloves? Do you have masks? Like how do you do that?
We definitely do not have enough gloves or masks, and we definitely do not have enough hand sanitizer or Lysol wipes. I mean, those things are just cannot be found. But what the pantries are doing, they already had good operations in terms of cleaning their spaces and all of that and disinfecting. But obviously everyone's ramping that up to the extent they can. And then what they're doing is, they typically, because they're moving outside, they're setting up their tables kind of spaced further apart. And I will say the pantry managers I've spoken with have said all of the patrons are being very understanding and they appreciate this. And so they're standing, in line, 6 feet or more from each other. They already know. Everyone's got the message. Like, this is how we need to operate to do this safely.
It sounds I was just gonna say, it sounds like they got it more than, the regular folks in town who are not really keeping to it.
Yeah, I would say that, from what I've heard, there's been really no issues in terms of like no one's complaining about it. And luckily the weather has been nice. So I did have one pantry on Thursday that ended up canceling because they were going to set up outside for safety, health issues, but it was pouring rain Thursday morning, so they didn't do their distribution. So really what we've been doing is trying to message, who's open, how can they operate safely within the recommendations, from the CDC. And then if they're going to close, how do we get their food to the places where it's needed? The other issue that's come up a lot, and we spent sort of the first few days of this week working on, is what's going to happen with the schools. Because a lot of kids are on free and reduced lunch, and that's a federal feeding program, and it's provided through schools. So we wanted to make sure that the schools were still going to do that. And in the area we serve, that they've still been able to do it. They've just shifted their operations, much like our pantries, either outside or, grab and go in a certain window of time. And then we are working with a couple school districts to see if they need supplemental food that we can, use from some of the pantries to the extent we have extra.
So if the school closes, what's the plan for that?
Yeah, so for the schools that have closed, they're still doing school lunches for kids that were eligible for that. So there are basically packed, like bagged lunches that are available. And some of the schools either have set up, like very far apart tables outside, and they have a few staff, they basically have like a custodial staff and a few food service folks on staff that are distributing food during the windows of time that are pretty broad, so that there's not a lot of interaction of people. I know in Orange, they have basically, if your last name starts with A through F, you come at this time. So they've really tried to space it out so that you're really avoiding critical masses of people, and that kids are still able to get like a lunch, a breakfast and a lunch. What they aren't able to get unless they come to a pantry is other groceries.
Right. If we look at like what's going on in Italy and all over the world, and we're a little behind on the corona, on the peak of it, it's going to get worse. What do you think the next few weeks are going to look like? What kind of support do you need?
Well, we don't know. I mean, honestly, we're talking to each pantry and trying to gauge, what they would need. I think what will happen is, if this gets much worse, which I expect it probably will, more pantries will close because either the buildings where they're located will force it to happen, or they just will need to protect, their volunteers. And I have heard some discussions of cities, townships kind of figuring out some plans for that. So I think it depends on how bad it gets. I think most of our pantries right now are trying to stay open. We have funding to be able to do some bulk purchasing for them. We're trying to get them some fresh food. A lot of the pantries are trying to give clients a lot more food than normal. So instead of just a bag for 1 week, they're trying to pack up, 2 weeks or longer, so that people can be good for a longer period of time. I think if it gets really bad, the cities will then kind of take over some of the food distribution. I know there are some discussions with Newark and Orange. There's some emergency planning that's happening now. So I think our role would be to try and keep, the pantries supported as best we can while they stay open. And I'm hoping that most will be able to still stay open.
Have you heard of any clients that have been affected directly with the virus?
I have not, but our role, because we're sort of a bit more of like a behind the scenes pantry support, I haven't heard anything like that yet. We have gotten a lot of calls from people who don't want to leave their house, asking if we make home deliveries. And that's something that's a real challenge for a lot of reasons. So a lot of our pantries don't do that. So we're trying to figure out if there's a way we could be supportive with that, but we're not quite there yet.
Could you use your bus for something like that?
In theory, we could, but we have a volunteer bus driver, and he's staying in his home too. So we, there's a model where we could maybe match individuals, with folks, but there's some other issues like privacy and some liability. So we're not 100% sure, but we're kicking around some ideas. But for right now, we're really just putting our resources behind the pantries that are, still operating with modifications.
So if any listeners or want to volunteer for a bus driver, you could use that.
Yeah, we could use that. We have a few offers actually, but yeah, we're talking to a few folks.
So a lot of the listeners are not here in New Jersey. If they wanted to, do you talk to other organizations that are not here, and do they use the same model? And if people wanted to help, where would they go to find out more stuff?
So the short answer is we do a lot of communicating with other organizations, but mostly within the state. So I would say within New Jersey, there's Hunger Free New Jersey. Depending on your county, there are other county-based food pantries like us. So I would just say check with your county food agency. But on a national level, I would say Feeding America is the main one that actually basically does a lot of support of the food banks. And the food banks are one of the major sources of food for the food pantries. So I would say either reach out, to your local food pantries if you know who they are. But if you're looking for a national organization, I would say Feeding America will help support this as well.
What's the most asked for item that your clients want, or what do they want the most?
Well, right now, we are getting a lot of requests for peanut butter and cereal and milk. And I think that is because all of the schools are closed and people are trying to feed their kids and make food last.
Are there things that I was going to say, are there things that people donate, like continually donate, that your clients don't want? Like, is there something out there like, oh, we got that again and we can't even get rid of it?
Not really, because the need is so great. Like pretty much everything that comes in is put to use. But I would say, and I didn't think about this before I got involved with this type of work, but often the pantries have some kind of budget to purchase food, but it's pretty minimal. So what they will buy is the canned veggies, or like the things that are a little bit cheaper. And so, sometimes we say, if you are able to make a donation to a pantry, maybe spend some money on like the higher protein, more expensive items, because that's something that's going to be a bit more of a luxury. So like canisters of oatmeal, we try and encourage like low sugar cereal, shelf stable milk. Those things are hardly donated, and they're so welcome because they're so expensive to buy for the pantries that they often just don't spend their money on that, because they really try and stretch their dollar. So they might have a lot of cans of corn and green beans, but not a lot of, the protein, like canned salmon or chicken or peanut butter or those sorts of things.
And I know that they love eggs, right?
So I will say we have, thanks to a fundraiser and Farm and Fork Society, we've been able to provide eggs, a really steady stream of eggs to the pantries this winter. And that has been like, they have been so thrilled to get it, and the clients as well. And so we're trying, where we can, we're trying to make sure that there are fresh food options. I mean, these times right now are a little tricky, but generally speaking, our goal is to really focus on the fresh food, because that is the thing that the pantries really, they might be in small spaces. They might not have a lot of refrigeration. So they really need help to manage the logistics of that. So we really try and help with the sourcing, the purchasing, or the donations, and then the delivery right to their doorsteps, basically when they're open, so that they don't have to deal with all of that. And it is really, really welcome.
So tell me, like now with this virus, what is this typical day for you? Because you've been swamped. What has changed, and what are you doing running around here now?
Well, this morning, I can give you an example just based on today. This morning, we had placed an order with the community food bank a few days ago, because we were starting to get worried about supply of food just because the grocery stores locally, people were getting their orders canceled and couldn't get deliveries. So we basically took a caravan of 5 volunteers to the food bank today and loaded up 200 cases of milk and 50 cases of oatmeal and 50 cases of pasta. And then we took it to the South Mountain YMCA, which we're using as like a base right now because we actually operate remotely, and unloaded it there, and then sent out a few carloads to pantries that are calling in saying, we had more clients than we expected and we're open tomorrow. Can you send us more food? We're kind of operating right now as the bridge because I think what's happening is, there's a shortage in the supply chain, and the food bank hasn't been able to get everything out to their pantries that they support. And everyone's kind of hunkering down, and like, sort of trying to stay in their homes and get enough food for their own families. So we've been trying to help with that. And then we've actually had a few people organize food drives for us. So right now, in Milburn, there's a option for people to actually just put food out on their doorstep. And we have volunteers that are just driving around and picking those up on certain days and then bringing that right to different pantries. So we're kind of managing both sides of it. It's really purchasing, actually 3 things: managing volunteers. We have a lot of people that want to help. And so we're trying to figure out like how to do that in a way that doesn't create a crowd. And so what that really is like having people just move food, collect food for us, deliver it to a specific pantry. And then we're dealing with the pantries. We're checking in with them saying, what are you seeing? What do you need? What are you needing? When can we get it to you? That kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of chaos, but, and then we're having calls with the different local, school districts, with city representatives to make sure that, that they're thinking about food, food supply, and that we're making this more of a coordinated effort, basically to maximize efficiency with all of this.
Is the community food bank getting the produce, or they having, or the whatever are they having supply chain issues? Is it coming from that, or is it get from them to get to you?
I think everyone's having supply chain issues right now, although they did have, so what they do is they kind of post a shopping list each day. And so when we see things on there, we just, kind of jump on it. But there are a lot of agencies doing the same thing. So it just depends on timing. I think the concern is that the grocery stores didn't, a lot of the pantries will just go to their local ShopRite or Stop and Shop to kind of balance out what gets donated. And so when those stores, when there's a run on food there, that's affecting the pantries too. And at the same time, the pantries usually get donations from churches or schools or whatever. And with all of that shut down, they really are not getting their usual inventory. So that's where our kind of redistribution efforts are happening. So for example, if we have a, interfaith food pantry of the Oranges decided to close, well, they had a huge inventory of food. So we now have that, and we're basically responding, as needed to calls coming in from the pantries, or when we reach out to them saying, okay, what do you need? We'll send a car, and then we'll get a volunteer and we'll fill up their car and send them over to whatever pantry needs it. So it's a lot of food logistics, I think, and kind of trying to match, where are the gaps? Where can we, pull from other areas to fill them? Or can we purchase, independently from a food distributor? If the grocery stores don't have it, if the food bank doesn't have it, can we purchase it from somewhere else?
Do you feel like now you are getting the food to the people who need, or some of the people slipping through the cracks, like they're not getting it because you're not getting enough?
I think we're getting enough right now to support the pantries. The concern I have are the individuals that are in their homes that aren't able to get to a pantry. And I think that number is going to increase. And that's where I think, especially for seniors, if there's local Meals on Wheels, we're trying to coordinate with different senior organizations to make sure that there's some way for people to get food if they can't leave their house. That's the thing that's keeping me up a little bit at night right now. But I would say for the most part, the pantries we have enough right now to get them what they need. Now, in a month from now, it might be different. But right now we're able to cover what they're asking.
So the people listening, what are the things that we can do to help you?
So I would say the the thing that we probably don't need right now is an abundance of volunteers, because we are trying to limit interactions with people and comply with social distancing rules. But we can always use food donations. So if you are, shopping online and you choose to add a few more items, we would certainly take them. I would say, you can go on our website. We're going to put out a link actually to do more of these drive-by pickups of food. So I'll put that out shortly. Or our phone number. You can always call or email us and we can tell you, ideally, if we can get you to take it right to a pantry, we would do that, or we can accept it, in between pantry openings. And then financial donations are always welcome as well, because like I said, we would like to be purchasing more. I would like to purchase more fresh produce and dairy for the pantries that have the capacity to handle that. And obviously, we're going to try and keep supply coming to the extent we can of the traditional non-perishables as well.
Well, thank you, Robin. Is there anything else you want everybody to know to help you out to make sure that these people get what they need?
I would say I actually have been really overwhelmed and impressed by people's generosity. I think there are a lot of folks that are aware that, the folks coming to pantries aren't able to stockpile food. They never were, and especially not now. So I have been really, it's just been heartwarming to have people reaching out to us asking how they can help. So I would say thank you is sort of my number one response. And for those that are interested in helping, I thank you in advance. And I would just say, it's a community effort for sure. We're definitely, we're not doing this on our own. We're talking to people, in our towns, and everyone really wants to help. So it's, the more we can kind of collaborate, the better it is for us. So we're working on it, but we appreciate the opportunity to be able to chat more about it with you and everyone who's listening.
Well, thank you so much. And I will, in the show notes, I will put links and everything where people can go and donate or just find out more about you and, help everybody who's in need. And hopefully this will go fast and this virus will, I don't even know,
Please let this have a quick time frame, because, it's definitely rough on everyone.
Right.
So, well, thank you and good luck. And thank you for helping everybody. And we really appreciate it. And everybody appreciate it. Thank you. And now we are at the Book to Play segment of Eat Well, Travel Often podcast. Here, I report back to you my personal experience. It could be a cookbook I cook from, a restaurant I ate at, even a place I recently visited. If you have any suggestions, please reach out to me. Not only do I host this podcast, but for the past 13 years, I have been running a food cooperative in my area called Farm and Fork Society. Link will be in the show notes. I started Farm and Fork Society in 2018 after a group of local citizens came together with a common goal to provide their families with healthy, organic, sustainably grown produce and support local farmers. First season started in my garage with 30 families and one farmer providing us with just vegetables. Members picked up their shares based on the honor system, which is still used today. Over the years, we outgrew my garage, added additional farmers, and now more than 100 local families get their produce from my farmers. Farm and Fork Society is now one of New Jersey's largest and most diverse CSAs. Any leftover produce that members do not pick up were donated to MEND New Jersey's food pantries. But 5 years ago, I found out that it was just not enough. And along with my son, we started a fundraiser to purchase weekly produce during the growing season for the food pantries. The fundraising program has two prongs: support those who are food insecure with fresh produce and help out our local farmers. Farming is hard business, and the farmers always strive to provide the community with quality, delicious produce at affordable prices. However, it has become increasingly more difficult to do so. Some key challenges our farmers face include climate change, drought, decreasing bee population, limits on hiring migrant workers, competition from big food businesses, and more. The cost for 24 weeks of produce, including fruit and veggies that can feed a family of 4 to 5, is $1,000. My goal is to be able to raise $20,000 so we can infuse capital into the farm and feed those in need. Let's stuff the MEND New Jersey Green Bean mobile truck with great produce. Link to donate will be in the show notes. Also, if you're interested in joining a CSA in your area, A link for local harvest will be in the show notes. It has listings of CSA by zip code. On a final note, there is a Facebook group called IntelliHelp. Link also will be in the show notes. It's a peer-to-peer network where anyone can request medical equipment, medicine, food, whatever they need. Whoever has it, gives it. This is the time we need to band together as a nation and a species. Give what you can selfishly and ask for help when you need it fearlessly. Thank you, Robin, for everything you're doing to feed those in need, and also for taking the time to speak with me and letting people know what they can do to help. Now is the time for all of us to come together as a community and help each other. We are all connected, and we will get through this. Stay healthy, and please stay the fuck inside. For more information about MEND NJ, other ways to help, and organization and items mentioned in this episode, please go to my website, eatwelltraveloften.net. Email me at melissa@eatwelltraveloften.net or hook up with me on Instagram or Facebook at Eat Well Travel Often Podcast. Love to hear any interview recommendations and comments you may have. Thank you, eat well, and travel often. Just don't travel now.